Alright, so here's my hot take. Paris actually smells kind of good.
I've really looked forward to making this video because, in addition to London and Paris being two cities that I have loved since my childhood Harry Potter fandom and fascination with my French last name, they're also two of the world's biggest rival metropolises. And they're definitely worthy rivals of each other. As the capitals of the United Kingdom and France respectively, both cities are densely packed with distinctive cultures, architecture, and cityscapes. Here on A Sense of Travel, my goal is to capture all 5 senses of as many cities, countries, and natural wonders around the world as possible so that I can accurately immerse you into the physical experience of those places through the screen. That said, today I'm diving into more than just the things you can experience through photography and bullet lists. How do London and Paris stack up in their visual environs, the way the air smells, the delicious culinary classics that define their taste palettes, the sounds that fill your ears in the city streets, the way the air physically feels, and the ambience and lore that creates the magic of the atmosphere? We'll find out today in the latest installment of Comparing the Senses, London versus Paris. Before we take on the senses, let's take a quick look at the cities by the numbers. Sitting in the southeastern corner of Great Britain, London is the capital of the United Kingdom, as well as the capital of England, one of the 4 constituent countries within the Union. The boroughs that make up London account for over 9 million residents, and the Greater London area is home to over 15 million people. Across the English Channel on continental Europe, in the north of France, sits Paris, the glittering French capital city. Paris's city proper is home to just over 2 million people, but it's the metro area that really counts here, and with over 13 million people, this stacks Paris and London pretty much on par population-wise. Part of the big rivalry between these two cities is purely historic. Their respective countries of the UK and France are separated by a mere 20 miles at the English Channel's narrowest point. So the first thing to look at when stacking up London and Paris is perhaps the most obvious: their dense, historic cityscapes. We'll kick off in London. London's cityscape is one of the most fascinating tales of history you can experience in person. The sprawling, gargantuan metropolis, a fabric of glass skyscrapers in eclectic shapes, silver and bronze domes, spires, and steeples, rooflines of white and gray, and a jumble of low-rise boxes, represents nearly every era of humankind over the last 2,000 years. Ancient Roman walls, the haunting medieval Tower of London, stately and elegant Victorian bridges, and whimsical, almost strange 21st century skyscrapers jumble together around the wide and murky River Thames in shades of brown, gray, white, and beige. Despite the layers and layers of history represented in London's visual environs, you'll find that it's all tied together by a decidedly royal ambience. This is best exemplified in the golden cast statues perched upon marble pillars that can be found virtually everywhere, golden crown markers placed on every red telephone booth, and, yes, the actual word royal at every turn. This is the most apparent in the city of Westminster, London's central borough, which is a visual masterpiece and almost overwhelming to the senses. The sea of old brick in various shades of brown, handsome marble, and decorative gray stone is filled with some of the world's most recognized buildings, monuments, institutions, and parks. Here, the silhouette of domes, pointy steeples, fairy tale-like spires and turrets, and old Victorian chimneys evoke royal, magical, and even eclectic sensations. To place yourself into a stroll through central London in your imagination, imagine dozens of jumbled, narrow streets and pedestrian promenades in the form of Covent Garden, Carnaby Street, Soho, and so many more distinctive districts where boutique shops, traditional British pubs, cafes and bookstores cram into the elegant brick, stone, and plaster buildings.
This awful trend of minimalism that's really taken over the planet doesn't seem to have taken effect in London's neighborhoods like Soho, Carnaby Street, and Covent Garden, and I am so thankful for that.
Tight roads lined by old brick and marble mid-rise buildings, red double-decker buses and black taxicabs sprinkled throughout the seas of traffic, lush corner parks, royal businesses, red telephone booths adorned with crowns. There's just a lot to take in. Nearby, Piccadilly Circus is almost London's equivalent to New York's Times Square, and while not as bright, flashy, and humongous, it still gives you that same sensation that you're in the center of the universe. London's modern skyscraper district is small, relatively speaking, but it's growing rapidly. Those whimsical skyscrapers within it that I mentioned before are honestly some of my favorites in the world. The cheese grater and the walkie-talkie are two fun examples and look exactly like colossal, glass and steel versions of their nickname counterparts. Now my favorite of these strange skyscraper shapes is the Gherkin, shaped like a cucumber.
To this day, the Gherkin is still my favorite modern building in the world, and I don't know why. I mean, come on guys, look at that thing.
Then there's those classic London neighborhoods filled with elegant brick Georgian homes guarded by small iron gates, accented in sandstone and dusted in the soot of London's old industrial age. If it weren't for the cars, the iPhones, and the sirens, you'd think you had been swept away into the tales of Charles Dickens. Man, I love London. Now, nighttime in London is almost an entirely different experience. Crowds by the thousands pack into the city's streets where London's beautiful marble buildings light up with a soft glow. It's difficult to truly summarize the ambience that the city emits at night, but if I could capture the vibe with only two words, those two words would be dinner party. While London's cityscape reflects its centuries upon centuries of evolution and change, Paris's cityscape has a rather sophisticated uniformity to it. When you imagine yourself in the heart of Paris, the first thing that may come to mind is the term wrought iron. The boulevards, alleyways, and most notably the buildings are a handsome beige or gray stone rising above tree-lined streets in roughly 4 to 6 stories with, as you might guess, wrought iron balconies and accents alongside them. The elegant and stately buildings are largely topped in gray chateau-style rooflines and coated in beige stone Art Nouveau facades. Everywhere you turn are cafes, bistros, and brasseries, most of which include covered outdoor patios, all of which are busy and bustling. Complete with sliding doors to open if it's warm or to close when it's cold, Paris has really mastered the art of alfresco dining. Walking the streets of Paris feels almost romantic and certainly artfully picturesque. Paris and its metro area are absolutely massive, and the best place to capture the scale is from atop the city's most iconic structure itself, the iron, 1,000-foot-tall Eiffel Tower. From up here, you'll find an endless expanse of dense, winding buildings and streets coated in hues of beige, gray, and deep greens and blues, set against a hazy, gray-blue horizon of softly rolling hills. The low-rise skyline is graced by stone spires, ornate wrought iron glass halls, domes, and graceful arches, but the cityscape is so vast that you have to play a game of Where's Waldo to spot them. Like London, there are a few skyscrapers, but the La Défense district sits a bit outside the city instead of at its core. Despite the relative uniformity of Paris's dense, cobbled, and winding alleyways and graceful boulevards, there are dozens of neighborhoods and landmarks that break up the pattern and pierce the sky, like Montmartre and its striking, domed Sacré-Cœur, the jaw-dropping Eiffel Tower, the eccentric red windmill atop Moulin Rouge, the Gothic bell towers of the Notre Dame Cathedral, the sprawling Baroque masterpiece of a palace that holds the Louvre, and countless others. Paris literally glows at night. Like, yes, the Eiffel Tower glows and occasionally glitters, but just in general, things feel very golden. The endless expanse of metropolitan Paris twinkles in the night sky, glowing in a soft amber and white, with the Eiffel Tower and its glittering lights as its magnificent centerpiece. Even the streetlights glow in a soft, orangey gold. In fact, even in the daytime, you'll notice a ton of golden accents on the buildings and gates and towering, flamboyant golden statues atop marble pillars. Now, the River Thames is definitely a defining part of London, but Paris's River Seine is an entirely different experience. The city really leverages that winding, deep blue river perfectly. Promenades line either side of the river pretty much throughout the entire city, adorned with small gardens, boat deck cafes, and arched stone bridges. By night, the river turns a deep, dark blue, reflecting the golden light of the city from its gentle ripples. It's quite a romantic experience, really. To sum it up quickly, while both cities are dense, fashionable, historic, and yet firmly 21st century riverside metropolises, London is a brick, stone, concrete, and glass patchwork of medieval castles, Victorian bridges, narrow row houses, quirky skyscrapers, red double-decker buses, and a royal touch, while Paris is a low-rise sea of beige stone, Art Nouveau ornamentals, flamboyant statues, hedge-lined gardens, wrought iron balconies, and enough expressionism to keep it just the right amount of weird. The city's overall color palettes differ quite a bit regarding their overall cityscapes, as indicated here. When you see a video or a picture of a place and you try to imagine what it must feel like to actually be there, an important component of that is the way the air smells. Let's see how London and Paris stack up. London was actually the city that made me start paying close attention to the way the air smells in different places around the world. There's a distinctive musk to the air here which almost acts as a bass note. As you imagine a stroll through London's narrow cobbled alleyways and chaotic bustling streets, various perfumes, hot tea, rich espresso, hearty pub foods, and a bit of cigarette smoke fill your nostrils. Depending on whether or not it's been raining, which it usually is, you'll get that distinctive smell that arises from wet stone and brick. The London Tube is fantastic, but the auto traffic in the city is still legendary, and you'll notice the scent of diesel fumes pretty much anytime you're near a street, which is almost always. Except, of course, in London's lush, sprawling parks like St. James or along the murky River Thames. Here, damp, dewy grass and fishy river water permeate your nose. A London-scented candle, if I were to make one, would contain notes of urban musk, espresso, piping hot tea, ozone, morning dew, and fishy river water. Anecdotally, at least, I've always heard and been told that Paris smells awful. Like that there's this pungent stench that's associated with the city. As of this video's recording, I've been to Paris 3 times in various parts of the year, and I don't get it.
Overall, it smells fine. I don't get what people are talking about when they say Paris smells horrible. I really don't.
I'm not saying that there's not like the occasional smell of pee or something, but I mean, that's any big city anywhere. The misty air throughout Paris's elegant urban canyons instead brings wafts of various, rather fruity perfumes, cigarette smoke, a layer of urban musk, wet concrete and stone, and auto fumes. As stereotypical as it might sound, you can actually smell freshly baking bread in the mornings, heightened by the damp air. You'll even catch wafts of sweet crepes from the dozens of little street-side stands throughout the city. Paris proper has a population density that rivals Manhattan, despite having little to no skyscrapers. That population density means that there is a ton of room for lush, beautifully landscaped, fountain-adorned parks, which add a layer of minty and floral-smelling gardens and damp earth. To top it off, the River Seine, which winds throughout the city, adds a cool note of river water to the air. If I were to make a Paris-scented candle, it would smell of fruity cologne, sweet crepes, freshly baked baguettes, urban musk, wet stone, and damp earth. Let me know in the comments which of these two cities has a scent profile that you prefer more. Maybe I'll create these candles one day after all. Comparing the tastes of London and Paris truly is apples to oranges. From a truly neutral stance, comparing may not even be the right word. It's pure contrast. Nonetheless, let's take a look at some of these tastes that really show that contrast between the two culinary experiences. I don't think it's a mystery that English food and French food are separated by more than an 11-mile channel. We've all heard the reputation before, that British food is bland, dull, and unseasoned. One of my favorite adages goes something along the lines of, they colonized the entire world for spices and then didn't use a single one of them. But is this reputation even fair anymore? I don't think so, personally. Here are some of the delicious foods that I tried that I feel capture the tastes of London. Fish and chips. There is no other way to start than with the most classic of them all. Fried, rich, and salty Atlantic cod, which should almost always be paired with malt vinegar and lemon juice, is just better tasting in the UK. I don't know how to explain it. The chips, or fries, if they're top-notch, are crunchy, golden, and crispy. Here in the UK, they're usually accompanied by mushy peas. I had my classic plate at a very quintessential-looking neighborhood pub near Camden Town. Steak and ale pie with mash. Pies and mash were the original British fast food. At Hung, Drawn and Quartered near the Tower of London, established in 1845, I dug into a steak and ale pie. The mash, or mashed potatoes, come doused in gravy, the spillover of which adds a nice little savory kick to the little side salad of cabbage and peas. Tea and scones. Tea time in London is as British as it gets. An English breakfast tea straight from the pot, mixed with a bit of milk to sweeten the flavor, is a delicious way to accompany the next British classic, scones. Fruit scones with jam in particular. If you're American, they're like biscuits. If you're from the deep south, they're like Bojangles' Bowberry biscuits. Bangers and mash. Meat and potatoes kind of make their way into everything in the British classics, don't they? Bangers and mash, essentially sausage and mashed potatoes, are a hearty and super filling meal that, at least in this case, comes accompanied by mushed up peas. It's a good thing I like peas. They're everywhere here. I think it goes without saying that dining in Paris is an experience that you really can't replicate elsewhere. Even the most casual of meals can feel like a special occasion, especially coming from an American perspective where restaurants want you in and out as quickly as possible. Here are some of the world-famous, carb-loaded, and body-warming dishes that accompany that sophisticated Parisian dining experience. Escargot. Escargot is a typical starter or even a main dish in France, and yes, they're snails. Just like mussels, you pull them right from the shell. Now frankly, I think escargot is delicious. You just kinda have to get over the fact that you're eating a snail. Besides, these little guys mostly just taste like what they're cooked with. In this case, a lot of garlic and butter. Ratatouille. Most of my fellow Americans and I learned about this homemade French classic from the Disney and Pixar movie, but the French have known all along just how delicious ratatouille is. Rich, saucy, and filled with a strong taste of tomato puree and zucchini, I enjoyed my ratatouille with salmon, al fresco style. In the rain. Classic Paris. Quiche Lorraine. This classic French dish from the Lorraine region is a quiche pie of eggs, cream, pork, and cheese. You can certainly taste the cream and cheese in this warm, savory slice, and alongside a piping cup of coffee, is perfect for a rainy Paris day. French baked goods. The scent of baking bread wafting through the elegant Parisian streets doesn't come from nowhere. Breakfast in Paris usually consists of fresh and delicious bread and pastries, and probably also a cigarette and coffee. Pain au chocolat and pain vienne were some of my favorites. Flaky, fluffy, buttery, and fresh, both of these bready French pastries are either filled with or covered in perfectly sweet chocolate. To sum it up, the tastes of London are hearty, heavy, simplistic, and drenched in tradition, whereas the tastes of Paris are light, bready, sweet, and not nearly as fried. What can I say though? I love them both. And of course, this is also not even close to a full list of the defining tastes of each city. Let's suppose for a moment that you could step into a photo or a video of London. What would it sound like? Well, for starters, London is, of course, a humongous city. The general soundtrack of the city has a base layer of rumbling engines, plenty of honking, sirens, and chattering, bustling crowds. It's a stark reminder that London, for all its postcard charm, is still one of the world's most important and fast-paced big cities. Beneath ground, the rumble of the London Underground keeps the city rolling despite the bustle. And if you're ever in town, be sure to
mind the gap between the train and the platform.
Timeliness and order are staples in British culture, and on the hour, every hour, the heavy bell chimes of Big Ben ring out from the Elizabeth Tower, an almost reassuring and comforting sonic experience.
You know, this is my third time to London, but it's the first time I've ever seen the Elizabeth Tower without scaffolding, and it is breathtaking.
The city's soundscape isn't pure bustle, though. Church bells chiming out from the nearby cathedrals, seagulls crying, people dining on the river's edge, trains screeching on the tracks above, and boat horns from the River Thames create a sonic atmosphere that's uniquely London. Now, stepping into a photo of Paris is more like stepping into an oil canvas, and despite having a much more densely populated urban core than London, is generally a bit quieter. As you imagine yourself strolling beneath the wrought iron balconies and towering trees of Paris's urban canyons, imagine the sounds of crows cawing, pedestrians walking on pavement and cobblestone, silverware clanking in the outdoor dining patios, and tons of motorcycles echoing from the stone facades. In some places, you can hear the sound of heavy trains on their tracks above you. Now, I'm not saying that Paris doesn't have a bustling soundscape like London by any means, it's just a bit softer.
Now, it's right around here that you get the full experience of the Parisian soundscape, right? Because you've got tons of traffic, so you hear a lot of cars, a lot of engines. You hear those French sirens, the ones that kind of sounds almost whiny. Off in the distance, horns honking, pedestrians on cobbled stones. I mean, it's crazy, it's chaotic. But in a lot of ways, that's Paris. And not necessarily in a bad way, but it is an active city, put it that way.
The well-manicured parks and gardens take you back to a Paris that existed well before the advent of cars and trains. Especially in the promenades along the riverside, boat engines, the sounds of rippling waves, and a brisk breeze fill your ears. Here's how the soundscapes of London and Paris stack up. Great Britain may be an island, but it ain't the tropical kind. London experiences a temperate oceanic climate, which means warm summers, cool to mild winters, and not a huge temperature difference between the two compared to other climates. Now, the myth of heavy rainfall in London is actually just that, a myth. London actually only sees half as much rain as places like New York City. Instead, however, the days can be quite misty, cool, and damp for nearly a third of the year. Surprisingly, Paris has quite a bit more rainfall than London. It feels like every day.
Every single day.
It's not actually every day, of course, but Paris does have the same oceanic climate type as London, although the city does have slightly more extreme temperatures than London from time to time and, despite all that rain, far more sunshine. Besides, rainy days in Paris aren't actually that bad after all. I mean, you're still in Paris.
You know what, Paris? I've embraced the rain. This is actually kind of nice.
I'm a strong proponent of the idea that to really capture the spirit and the magic of places around the world, you have to let your imagination roam wild a little bit. After all, urban legends, mythological fairy tales, and dramatized history are a big part of the identity of cities and countries worldwide. Letting fantasy and folklore infiltrate your mind as you wander about can really bring out the mystique and the charm in different places. Let's take a look at the ambience that each city evokes. We'll kick off in London. It's almost impossible to explore London and not feel as if you're part of some type of whimsical fantasy novel. There are so many mysterious and magical worlds that use London as a home base, from Harry Potter to A Christmas Carol to Sherlock Holmes to Mary Poppins to 101 Dalmatians. The cartoon one, of course. You'll feel that magical sense of the wizarding world as you catch a train from the dull, brown brick King's Cross station, a perfect metaphor for that transition between the Muggle and magical world, or as you cross the Blackfriars Bridge into the rather melancholy world that Charles Dickens knew. It isn't just modern fantasy that shapes the ambience of London. The city has plenty of its own very real lore, especially in the foreboding Tower of London.
Now, a lot of London's history is actually pretty dark and pretty morbid, and no place really captures that the same way as the Tower of London. You want to talk about dark and morbid, some of the stories that come out of this place are, well, they're a bit terrifying.
There's nothing quite like gazing over the eccentric and modern London skyline while standing on a 1,000-year-old stone and timber ledge that bears the weight of many centuries of bloodshed and conflict. It's a strange feeling to carry. And then, of course, there's that word that sums up the London experience in one fell swoop: royal. Sure, you'll feel the weight of the British crown as you wander the grounds of Buckingham Palace and St. James's Park, but you'll also feel it in the golden cast statues perched upon the marble pillars and golden crown markers placed on every red telephone booth. At times, it can feel like there isn't a block that you can stroll down that doesn't have a business or building labeled the Royal blank. Just like London, Paris is a city that is absolutely dripping in whimsical fantasy and a rich lore of its own. There is no denying that Paris has one of the strongest senses of identity that a city can have. It's artistic, romantic, chic, sophisticated, and, well, strange. Now, there was a lot of controversy at the opening ceremonies of the 2024 Olympics, but I think it's important to understand this. Paris is weird. It always has been, and I hope it always will be. This quirkiness and weirdness have created some of the best art humankind has ever experienced. The Pigalle district is a great example of Paris's unashamed expressionism. The birthplace of the once seductive can-can dance, Moulin Rouge and its flashing red windmill roof anchor the district, famous for its theater, nightlife, and other, adult entertainment. This area has the energy of a classic carousel at a carnival. And speaking of that art, Wandering the narrow passageways throughout the city make you feel like you've stepped into an art canvas depicting the finest, most sophisticated standard of living in the Renaissance era. If you didn't know any better, you'd forget that you were living in the 21st century altogether. A beret atop your head, a cigarette in one hand, sunglasses on, and a strange, Cirque du Soleil reminiscent adventure ahead. The idea here isn't to pit these two cities up against each other. In fact, the idea is to celebrate the fact that there is so much world to discover, experience, and explore. Thanks for diving into the truly amazing rival global capitals of London and Paris with me today, and stay tuned for more city comparisons in the near future. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.